Hey, RC Thornton here. So I wanted to talk about one of the biggest problems people have when they are trying to resolve back tax problems with the IRS, especially if they haven't filed their taxes in a long time, which is probably 80% of the people we deal with, as they have some unfiled returns too. The biggest problem business owners have is their records are a complete and utter mess, right? Most people that haven't filed don't have bookkeeping. They don't really have anything. Maybe they have like a bunch of bank statements or, some Excel sheet they put together 3 years ago. And people get really overwhelmed by that. And that, I think, is one of the biggest roadblocks to people getting started with fixing things with the IRS. So what would I recommend to you if you're in that situation? You're a business owner and you're serious about getting this taken care of, but your records are just like an A-bomb went off and like you have nothing. So how do you bring this all together? So 3 pieces of advice I'm going to give you here. Number 1 is if you have a bunch of years of tax returns to catch up, number 1 is to have the right expectation. You're not going to be able to get your records perfectly after 5 years of not filing or 4 years or 3 years. Your memory is going to be shady as to what it was your transactions were in the first place. The records you do have are already going to be minimal. And a lot of people I talk to, they're sitting around thinking about how to make like the perfect tax return or the perfect record compilation for their taxes from 4 years ago. It's just not going to happen. When you're in this situation, your focus needs to change to good enough. And what I'm a big believer in is good enough for these purposes is important, because what's the bigger of two evils? Something that's good enough, but you got done what you needed to do, or continuing to not file your taxes because it's not perfect, but that's actually like a huge no-no in the eyes of the IRS. So we want to go for good enough. The biggest thing is the 80-20 rule, and that leads to number 2 is the 80-20 rule. There are some businesses that can't use this. Like let's say you run like a $20 million a year trucking company. And we've had clients like that before, right? Where it's extraordinarily complex. Something like that, maybe you are going to really need to go through each and every little thing in more detail. But for the average person we deal with, which I would say is either a sole proprietor, business owner, or an entrepreneur that perhaps has between 1 to 10 employees with revenues of, $100,000 to $1 million, 80 to 90% of the time, you can put your records together just by understanding what your business's normal transactions are. Like think about your business, right? Like let's say maybe you're a self-employed consultant. Like do you have, what's the normal things you spend money on? Just take an hour or a half an hour this afternoon to just write stuff down, like your E&O insurance, your home office, your printer. Did you pay for some advertising? Do you have like Google or Outlook or something like that? Maybe you bought a computer. Maybe you had some mileage on your car. If you just sit there and think about logically for a little bit of time of like the normal things you spend money on in your business in a daily basis, it's honestly not that difficult. And yeah, okay, maybe you're gonna miss like that Starbucks you had with a client back in 2017 for $4.12. But honestly, again, we don't have time for that, right? Just sit down and think about your normal expenses. And if you just brainstorm what they are and write them down, you're gonna be able to get most of that information, right? So like your E&O insurance, liability insurance, you can just call your insurance carrier and get your old bills for that, right? Like you don't need to go through a bunch of old records to do that. Or if you have Outlook, or like if you're spending money on Facebook ads or Google ads or the radio or like whatever it is you're doing, you can easily just get invoices for that. And that's gonna get you 80 to 85% of the write-offs right there. Number 3, this is a little bit more of an advanced hack, and this is something we really help our clients with, is using technology to parse and basically create Excel spreadsheets from old bank statements. So a lot of people try to tackle this problem by sitting there going through their old bank statements with a highlighter and like a pen and like writing in the categories in the corner. That will not work because it takes so much time and so much energy. Most people completely burn themselves out trying to do it, right? And then compiling all those numbers, let's say you even do it, it takes forever to even just compile the numbers that you highlighted and marked. So it's a horrible idea unless you actually have technology that can convert bank statements into like an Excel spreadsheet that's categorized and alphabetized. There's a few different solutions for it out there for these tools that exist. None of them are really that easy to use. We use some of them in our company and it took a lot of training. My team, we spent, hours. It took us like a month and a half to figure out how to use the main tool we use. But, if you really want to get those granular numbers, that is the way I'd recommend going, because it's a lot easier if everything's kind of alphabetized and categorized. It's also very hard because you can find a lot of tools that claim to do that, but they actually just really suck. Like, they don't work, or they're really hard to configure. So, really, for most people, what I'd recommend is good enough, and just think of the main transactions you have. And if you really want to get more detailed, you have to use automated technology to create Excel spreadsheets of your bank statements. You might say, like, what about a bookkeeper? I love bookkeepers. I think you absolutely need to have one for your business on an ongoing basis. But honestly, for back tax stuff, it's going to be an expense you don't have to bear, and it's going to take a really long time, and that's going to slow the progress down. If you hired a bookkeeper to do like 7 years of books, it just wouldn't. I mean, hey, you'd have really accurate books, but it would cost a lot of money that could be better spent on resolving the problem at a higher level, right? So you can get, for an extra huge amount of money, you could be 90% accurate rather than 80%. And I don't know, to me, like, unless you just have a lot of, like, maybe some people like we talked to do have a huge budget for this, sure, why not, I guess. But honestly, for most people, I wouldn't recommend using a bookkeeper for back tax book compilations unless you have a really complicated business, or if you're just like, hey, whatever, I'm just going to pay. So look, if that has helped, I really hope it has. If you have any questions on that, let me know. We prepared hundreds, if probably not, thousands at this point, of tax returns for business owners that haven't filed in a long time. And this is the technique that we use, what I just shared with you. Like, we don't waste time doing stuff that's going to consume a lot of time and not get results. Like, that's the worst thing you could do, and it's just not going to get done if you don't have a good approach. So if you are in this situation, if you want to get things resolved with the IRS, but you just don't know how to do it, but you do want to get some help, if you click above or below, you are welcome to schedule a time to speak with me personally for a tax strategy session. Be glad to sit down with you and try to help you get this monkey off your back. So I hope that helped. Talk to you soon.